Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at a situation of truly staggering proportions. It's August 18th, 2026, and the U.S. is facing a wildfire emergency that is literally testing the absolute limits of our national response capabilities. We're going to take a completely data-driven look at the sheer scale of this crisis. We'll use the latest situational reports to understand exactly what is happening on the ground, up in the air, and in the atmosphere. Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a lot of ground to cover. First, a nation at level 5. Then, the global and military response. Third, weather as the fire catalyst. Fourth, ground zero in the northwest. And finally, fires across the west.
So, starting off with Section 1, a nation at level 5, the macro view.
To really grasp the magnitude of this crisis, we have to start by looking at the sheer scale of what's facing the country from a bird's-eye view. Now let this number sink in for a second. 5. The United States is currently sitting at National Preparedness Level 5. That is the absolute highest state of alert in the entire wildland fire management system. When you hit level 5, it means national resources are heavily committed. The system is completely tapped, you're at maximum deployment, and it takes incredibly complex coordination just to make sure the most critical fires are getting the attention they need. And here's exactly why the system is maxed out. Just yesterday alone, literally in a single 24-hour period, 92 new fires were reported nationwide. 92! That is a shocking daily surge of new ignitions. And get this, out of those 92, 4 of them were immediately classified as new large fires. So firefighters aren't just out there battling the blazes that have been burning for weeks, they are constantly playing defense against this continually expanding map of brand new threats. All of this brings us to a jaw-dropping statistic. Over 7.2 million acres have burned across the United States so far in 2026. Let's really anchor on that scale. To reach that massive footprint, firefighters have already responded to nearly 49,000 individual wildfires this year. It's just a massive, landscape-altering number, and it perfectly sets the stage for the kind of colossal response we're about to look at. Moving right along to Section 2, Global and Military Response, the Cavalry. Now, what's really interesting about this is that when a nation hits preparedness level 5 and has millions of acres burning, you absolutely cannot do it alone. It requires an unprecedented, all-hands-on-deck approach that stretches way beyond our own borders. The sheer diversity of the forces teaming up right now to fight 80 uncontained large fires is just incredible. We've got an international contingent from Australia and New Zealand bringing 3 15-member management teams and 196 personnel straight to the Northwest and Great Basin. The U.S. Army, they've deployed 240 soldiers from the 7th Infantry Division out of Joint Base Lewis-McChord. We've even got our neighbors in Canada sending an air tanker and a spotter bird dog plane down to Boise, Idaho. And the Air National Guard from both Colorado and California have deployed their massive MAFS C-130 water-dropping planes. It is quite literally a highly coordinated, global logistics operation happening right over our heads. Which brings us to Section 3, Weather, the fire catalyst. To understand why these fires are so incredibly aggressive, and honestly why so many are starting in the first place, we really have to look up. The atmosphere is driving this whole thing. The reports highlight what might sound to us like a pretty minor meteorological event, a weak upper-level disturbance tracking through Northern California, bringing along some subtle warming. But in fire terms, this acts as an invisible catalyst. It pushes these gusty winds and incredibly low relative humidity across northeast California, sweeping right up into northern Nevada, southeast Oregon, and southern Idaho. It essentially acts like a giant hairdryer pointed straight at already dry brush, drying out the landscape even further and forcefully pushing those existing flames forward. Let's move to and see how this builds in Section 4, Ground Zero, the Northwest. So we're zooming in from those macro national weather dynamics down to the Pacific Northwest. And the Northwest is the primary focus of national resources right now for a very specific reason. Washington State is currently battling a staggering 37 large uncontained fires. Oregon is right behind them with 21. Now compare that to another heavily affected western state like Montana, which has 8. The sheer concentration of extreme fire activity in Washington and Oregon is exactly why those international teams and military units we just talked about are currently deployed there. But even within the exact same region, the front lines are wildly unpredictable. Consider this stark contrast happening right now in Oregon. On one hand, you have the Picture Rock fire near Summer Lake. It's displaying extreme fire behavior. We're talking running, torching, and spotting, and it is actively threatening energy infrastructure. Contrast that directly with the Roe Creek complex in the Prineville district.
That one is exhibiting minimal fire behavior, just kind of creeping, smoldering, and backing. This really shows us the incredibly complex, varied puzzle that incident management teams are trying to solve on a day-by-day, hour-by-hour basis.
Drilling specifically into those 37 fires in Washington, let's look at 3 major hotspots just to remind ourselves of the very real human element here. First, the Little Giant Fire is actively running and threatening critical infrastructure. Then there's the Sinlahecken Fire. It's moving moderately, but it is actively threatening residences and actually forcing evacuations. And finally, the Moderate Fire. This is exactly where those 240 Army soldiers from Joint Base Lewis McChord are currently deployed on the ground, assisting in suppression operations. This is where the tactical execution of that Level 5 preparedness is actually happening in real time.
All right, let's wrap up with Section 5, Fires Across the West.
Let's broaden our scope back out slightly to take a rapid-fire tour of how the rest of the Western states are battling this crisis. Because, well, the Northwest certainly isn't fighting alone. The weather extremes across the West right now are a major, major hurdle, and the data brilliantly illustrates how the region's climate has a real split personality. Down south, you have this sweltering, baking desert heat. Phoenix is sitting at 111 degrees, Las Vegas at 108. Meanwhile, up north in places like Pocatello, Idaho, and Helena, Montana, it's cooler, mostly in the 80s. But they are facing thunderstorms. And in the world of wildland firefighting, thunderstorms often mean lightning strikes without any rain. That threatens to instantly ignite new fires in an already incredibly strained region. Because of these crazy conditions, the rest of the West is locked in an ongoing battle. Montana is managing 8 large fires right now, including Sand Creek and Bobcat Lakes. Idaho has 5 active large fires, including the Tartar Fire. Colorado, they also have 5. Nevada is out there battling 4 large blazes, including the Bug and Stallion Complex in high winds. Utah has 3 large fires, actively threatening residences and forcing closures. And down in New Mexico, 3 large fires are pulling on regional resources. The map is literally completely lit up. So the absolutely crucial point we are left with is this. We have exactly 28,710 personnel currently deployed nationwide. They are stretched globally, fighting over 7 million scorched acres in extreme heat, dangerous storms, and shifting climates. It is a very fragile balance of national emergency response right now. The ultimate provocative question we have to ask ourselves as we monitor all this data is, with the system completely tapped out at Level 5, what happens to this massive footprint if the winds shift again? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep an eye on the skies, and we'll see you next time.